10 short minutes. That's how long a fashion show lasts these days. The culmination of 6 months of work by dozens of people. But how did the intimate presentation in the couture salon of 100 years ago become this highly staged and media-covered spectacle? The exhibition Catwalk, the art of the fashion show at the Vitra Design Museum traces the fashion show back to its beginnings. Fashion shows are not just about displaying clothes on a catwalk. They are total works of art combining architecture, set design, lighting, music, hair, makeup and styling. The Vitra Design Museum in Weil am Rhein in Germany showcases the various aspects that play a role in a fashion show before the exhibition moves on to the V&A Dundee in Scotland. The two museums have conceived the exhibition as a collaborative project, reflecting on the fashion show through clothing, photos, films, stage objects, invitations, and other ephemera. The beginnings of the fashion show date back to the end of the 19th century and are presented in the exhibition through some of the important protagonists of that time. Charles Frederick Worth, considered the father of haute couture, Paul Poiret, who presented his shows at times in his garden or as costume parties, and Jeanne Paquin, who sometimes combined her défilés with ballet performances, among others. Using illustrations, photos, books, and even rare film footage, the exhibition shows the salon shows that were held exclusively for the haute couture customers. At the turn of the century, the first models who presented the creations still wore a so-called fourreau, a replica of which can also be seen in the exhibition. This tight black satin dress allowed the mannequins to change clothes quickly and also protected the high-quality pieces from bodily secretions. In addition to salon shows, designers at the beginning of the 20th century also presented their creations in theaters, on ocean liners, at horse racing tracks, and in department stores. However, all these formats initially remained closely tied to the exclusive setting of haute couture. A radical change did not take place until the 1950s. Although the catwalk had already been developing before this, from the middle of the 20th century onwards, it increasingly pushed salon presentations into the background. With the development of prêt-à-porter or ready-to-wear fashion, in which designers produce collections in standard sizes for a wider audience for the first time, the setting and audience of the shows also changed. In addition to the experimental designs of Paco Rabanne, who used industrial and everyday materials and had his models walk barefoot to experimental music, the exhibition also features an example from Germany. Claudia Skoda's fashion shows, such as Big Birds, in which the models were inspired by the movements of birds in a zoo, were artistic happenings in the 1970s. Overall, from the 1960s onwards, fashion shows were more about performance, about presentation, than exclusive salon presentations. The exhibition then continues with a look at the 1980s to the mid-2000s, when fashion shows became increasingly spectacular and large-scale, as in Chanel's productions, while subversive designers reinvented the format. One example is Maison Margiela's Spring-Summer 2006 collection, in which models were pushed across the catwalk and the garments changed during the presentation as colorful ice cubes chains melted and dyed the fabrics. Also exhibited is the last garment from the legendary Russian doll collection by Dutch designer duo Viktor and Rolf. They presented their Autumn-Winter 1999 collection on a single model, gradually layering more and more garments until she was carrying over 70 kilos of clothing. What happens behind the scenes at a fashion show is also shown. Model cards from Balenciaga are on display, capturing the looks with small sketches, fabric samples and numbers. And images by Shohaya, who who has been photographing backstage at shows for more than 25 years, show the intimate moments just before the show, as if she were looking through a keyhole, and thus reveals a perspective that normally remains hidden from the audience. Display cases contain props and relics from shows, such as objects from the Chanel supermarket that viewers of the show were eager to take home with them, as well as the white cotton cloth from Maison Margiela's first fashion show in 1989, on which the models left red footprints with their paint-stained tubby boots, and which Margiela used again in the upcoming collection for garments and accessories. Such materializations of what are in fact fleeting events are also the invitations on display in the exhibition. The invitation has evolved from a simple paper to a collector's item in its own right. Besides a furry invitation from Yuji Yamamoto or illustrated invitations from Emmanuel Kahn, there are also Margiela's subversive invitations, which were painted by children or pretended to give seating arrangements that didn't exist at the show. And even a broken iPhone that the brand Balenciaga used to invite people to its Autumn-Winter 2022 show. Invitations allow designers to communicate the theme or mood of their show before it even takes place. The topic of the collection is also reflected in the set design of the fashion shows. The exhibition features models of shows designed in advance by agencies and architects in collaboration with the labels. For example, designs by the firm OMA headed by Rem Koolhaas, which has been designing the sets for Prada for more than 2 decades, can be seen. The museum also shows that fashion shows can look completely different under exceptional circumstances. The Théâtre de la Mode took place in Paris at the end of the war in 1945. Due to a shortage of resources, instead of designing for models, couturiers created small dresses for 70 cm tall wire dolls, which were a reference to the Pandoras that had been sent to French courts by dressmakers as early as the 18th century. The exhibition was first shown at the Louvre and then traveled to London, Stockholm and Copenhagen. Maria Grazia Chiuri also staged the Autumn-Winter 2020 collection for Dior in this vein, when no shows could take place during the pandemic. The collection was shown on dolls that traveled in a suitcase and were the protagonists of the short film The Dior Myth. Also during the pandemic, Jonathan Anderson decided to send his Spring-Summer 2021 menswear show for Loewe as a show in a box. This package contained garments, a stage, bags, shoes, fabric samples, portraits of the design team, and music, to give the impression of a complete show in a small format. Like Dior and many other designers, Virgil Abloh also opted for a cinematic narration of the collection for Louis Vuitton during this period. The short film shown in the exhibition features the collection, which blends fashion and architecture. The latest examples presented in the exhibition also show that fashion shows are not just stage presentation, but increasingly works of art in their own right, influenced by politics, philosophy, and current events. As creative director for Gucci, Alessandro Michele has repeatedly drawn inspiration from texts and theories, including Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, which inspired the Autumn-Winter 2018 collection. Demna's collections for Balenciaga primarily reflect the multiple global crises of our time and the current political situation. The aesthetics of politics also influenced the runway show represented here by a dress that was visually inspired by the European Parliament. Collaborations between designers and artists are also increasingly finding their way onto the catwalks. Austrian artist Erwin Wurm presented his 1-minute sculptures activated by performers at the beginning of the Autumn-Winter 2025 show for Issey Miyake, created by designer Satoshi Kondo. The fashion show thus becomes a medium for social and theoretical debate, not just a presentation of clothing. Overall, the exhibition uses selected examples to display that much has changed in fashion shows. 3-hour salon shows have become 10-minute media spectacles, that seem to be becoming increasingly extravagant. Much, however, seems to have remained the same. 100 years ago, fashion shows also already had an artistic dimension, for example, when they took the form of theater performances. While the exhibition cannot highlight every extraordinary show from the past 100 years, it focuses on some that are representative of their periods. With a few exceptions, it mainly shows examples from the major fashion houses, from House of Worth and Paul Poiret to Chanel and Balenciaga. Through photos, videos, and objects, it becomes clear that fashion shows always reflect the times in which they are created. This exhibition about the visual spectacles of fashion not only illustrates how clothing and its presentation have changed, but also how they have been mediated, and how our understanding of fashion, bodies, and identity has been reflected and shaped by these total works of art.